Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Dwarf Fortress. I am Sir Tristan, and in this episode we're going to talk about the main screen for Dwarf Fortress, the main play screen for Dwarf Fortress, now that we have a fortress already. But I want to go over something really quick. There's a new version of the Lazy Noob Pack that's come out. By default, every time a new version comes out, when you run the Lazy Noob Pack, when this little screen pops up here, you'll also get an additional pop-up saying there's a new version. Do you want to go to the website to download it? You can change how often it checks for updates right here under the options, check for updates. I just leave it on at every launch so I know. One thing I did not cover before is when you have multiple versions of Dwarf Fortress, how do you transfer save files over? And are they compatible? They're usually compatible unless a very large Dwarf Fortress update comes out. So like, instead of 40.24, if we ever go to 41 point something, old saves will probably not work. But because the version of Dwarf Fortress didn't change, you can see here the version's the same, 40.24, 40.24. But the starter pack version, revision 12, revision 13, that's all that changed. So you know that the saves are going to be transferable. So what you do is you go into 13, or the most recent one, whichever one you're going to want to play as, or play in, and you do copy data from older starter pack, and this will bring up a MS-DOS prompt. Then it'll say, how many do you want to copy over, which ones, and it will copy them over automatically, and it will put them in the data saves right there, 1 and 2. 1 is the region that we're playing, and 2 for me is like a practice region to kind of refresh what I'm trying to learn so that I can teach it correctly. So we are in revision 13, and I've got it loaded right here. There's a few things that I've enabled, and it'll explain why my game looks a little different than it did before. I have true type fix turned on here, which I recommend. This will do 2 things, which I'll explain once I get to the game. And I have workflow turned on, which I'm going to explain in a later video. It's a more complicated plugin for DF Hack that automates a lot of the tedium for this game. Which is going to be very useful once we learn how to do the basics. I don't want to go into that until we get the basics down. But I have Dwarf Fortress running right here, and I want to go from the main menu for now. If you notice, the text looks different than it used to, and that's a part of that true type fix. It will allow the default text to appear alongside tile sets so that you don't get any weird mismatch of like a coffin for a 0, or if you remember, there was like a blank space where the periods were because it was sharing tiles and the periods were sharing. So that true type fix from DF Hack will allow me to kind of use the correct text so things will look correct, plus all the really cool tile set. So we're going to do continue playing, and there's region 1. Now unfortunately, if you remember from episode 3, just the last episode, the name of our fort was the Fiery Trade, and as you can see, that's not listed here anywhere. Fiery Trade is actually Ziralnish, if you follow my mouse up there. That's the dwarven name, Ziralnish, of our fort. And Zuzatossum, if you remember from episode 2, is the domain of hurricanes. That's the world that we created, or the region that we created. You're going to have to memorize what your dwarven names are, because when you load the game like this, it's not going to tell you, oh, Fiery Trade. It's just going to tell you the dwarven name, the mode, the world you're in, and what year it is, which is 250. So we're going to head and press enter, and press enter again. And remember, all the keys that I press, the game's going to load, all the keys that I press will appear in the bottom right corner. Hello! So you can always follow along with what I'm doing on the keyboard. Alright, so here's the main Dwarf Fortress view. This is the screen, this is what you'll be looking at. We'll be looking at together 90-95% of the time. So get very used to this. And I understand that it's complicated and it's just a bunch of little boxes with symbols inside. You're going to be looking at it a lot, and I'm going to be explaining everything we're looking at. That's what this episode is primarily about, is just what we're looking at. And how you can move the view around. So let's just start. I'm not going to unpause the game. I'm going to leave it exactly like it is. Let's talk about what we're looking at. Follow my mouse. In the upper left corner you can see it's paused. To pause and unpause, you press space. And as you can see, the world starts moving. Pause it again, everything is frozen. Unpause, You can see the waves start to retreat back into the ocean here. You can see some dwarves, some animals moving around. Here's a wave coming in as I unpause it again. Alright, so pause and unpause. You're going to be pausing this game a lot to build things, and the game will auto-pause whenever you look at another screen or when you want to build something. The game will auto-pause a lot. FPS, if you remember in the Lazy Noob Pack, in Advanced, we set our calculation FPS and our graphical FPS at 150, at 100, and at 50. And you can see we're running pretty much right there. When we unpause, 99, it drops a little bit. As we add dwarves to our fortress, as our fortress gets more complex, as we start giving more and more commands to our dwarves, that number will slow down. It will reduce. It'll go slower, which basically means that the game will not run as fast. So tasks that are going to take us 2 seconds right now in the future may take us 2.5, 3 seconds, etc., depending on how complicated our fort gets. That's just how this game is set up to run. Because there's no graphical, updates. It doesn't update, 30 frames a second or whatever. Technically, it's doing it at 100 right now. But there's no set. It can fluctuate. And instead of seeing, skips in rendering like you might with a 3D game, the game will just slow down. It won't be very noticeable till later on, though. Dwarf Fortress, that's the mode that we're in, which is pretty obvious. The date, which will change very slowly. I'm not sure exactly how long a season is. Actually, let's take a look at that real fast. Seasons. How often are seasons? As far as gameplay goes, seasons? Anything? No, it doesn't really seem to say. And honestly, that will depend on how fast your machine is, how well your machine can handle this 100 frames per second or whatever it may be. But the date is up there. As far as I know, nothing really uses the date during gameplay to determine anything, so don't worry about the date too much. Idlers is how many idle dwarves you have. Pretty self-explanatory. On the bottom left, it's clear, it's raining, and it's snowing. Really? I don't think it's doing all that at once. Oh, it is, actually. As I unpause, you'll see, if you look at my mouse cursor, there's this little square here, this blue square, and if I unpause, you'll see them appearing everywhere. So it looks like it's raining, and somewhere else it's also snowing. But I won't bother with that too much right now. So, and somewhere on the map it's raining, somewhere on the map it's snowing, and it's also clear somewhere as well. In the bottom right corner, you have your happiness level. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different happiness levels, with green being obviously very happy, and the red over here being very unhappy. By default, everyone starts as pretty freaking happy, which is good. They're at 7. But this would be an at-a-glance kind of, I can use this to determine at a glance, how is my fort doing. On the right side of the map, it's kind of hard to see, but there's this blue section and a brown section, and then right in the middle is kind of a whitish little tile. This is your elevation, or how high or how deep you are in the earth. Dwarf Fortress is a 3D game, but you only ever view 2 dimensions at a time. Obviously, X, Y, wait, is it X, Y? I think it's X, Y. I always get those confused. Anyway, there also is a Z level. You just can only see 1 at a time. The best way that I've ever been explained this is it's like a cake. Imagine Dwarf Fortress is a cake. You have layers of, cake itself and icing as well. You can only ever see 1 layer at a time. And in between each layer is icing, or like a little extra layer. So that's kind of sort of how you can think about it, and that may not make much sense right now, but I'm going to start going up and down layers in a moment to explain. So let's just take this for instance. Look at my mouse, as you can see it here. You see this little circle right here? I know this happens to be the trunk of a tree. If I go up 1 layer, you can see the tree has expanded now to show leaves, branches, the core. I'm going to go up another layer, and you can see even more branches. Parts of the tree has been obscured. There's more trees over here. So I can go up and down Z levels with shift and period to go down, or comma to go up, or greater than, less than, depending on what you want to call it. They're the same key on the keyboard. So I'm going up and down right now just to kind of show you. It's going down 1, and up one. So let's use our cake example. Right now we are looking at the very top of this river here. I'm going to unpause it and you can see there's water flowing through. This is our brook. I forget the name of it. It was truncated, so it was like the invincible brook of something. I don't remember the name. It's not too important. So imagine you're just looking at the very top edge of the water, really even the space above the water a little bit. And if I go down one layer, I'm now looking at the interior of the lake, the actual water. Same thing over here in the ocean. If I go up one layer, you can see in this particular layer of cake, we have our dwarves, all of our animals. Here is the water, here are the waves. If I go down a layer, we have the earth that we can't see into, and we have water. So the water gets pretty deep pretty quickly, as you can see. It just jumps directly into 7, which, remember, if you remember from the first video, is as deep as water can get. So that may not make a lot of sense just yet. And so probably in the next video too, I'm going to get a visualizer. It's like a 3D visualization to kind of help explain what that looks like. But we're not going to be shifting layers too much for now. So while the game is paused, you can look around with the arrow keys, as you can see in the bottom left corner. And I'm going to go up to the upper left. So there's the upper left corner of my play area. We'll go to the upper right. We have this interesting looking line running through. That may be like a current or something. As you can see if you follow my mouse here, this interesting looking line that runs down. And I may actually... Can I turn on the mouse thing? No, it doesn't look like it here. That's alright. I was thinking I could show, you know, where my mouse was with like a color highlight or something, but that's okay. I might make it bigger in the future. We'll see. I'm gonna go to the bottom right corner. More water. We knew that, if you remember from the from the embark episode where we picked our spot. We kind of knew exactly what was going to be here. We have lots of sand, it looks like, lots of grass. We have our brook. I'm not sure what this is right here. We have some ponds or some, you know, lakes, little groups of water. I assume these will be fresh water. I don't actually know. We'll see. So how do I actually know what everything is? Well, there's a very specific button that you can press. It's always the same button, and it's K for look. The K in look. Look. If you press K, you get this section on the right here, where my mouse is. And then you get a cursor, or a mouse icon, right here. It's not really a mouse icon, I guess. It's just a selection icon. It's this yellow X. Unfortunately, my mouse is obscuring it, so I'm going to move the mouse away. But you can see this yellow X on the leftish area of the screen, and I can move it around with the arrow keys. And depending on what that's resting on, the black section on the right will tell me what I'm looking at. So black wet sand is here. If I go down to the green, this is dense ryegrass. If I go over to this yellow, this is wet yellow sand. Makes sense, right? Yellow sand, black sand. If we look at these little icons here, this is driftwood. More driftwood. More driftwood. So it looks like there's driftwood all over the place. There's also conglomerate. I'm not sure what conglomerate is. Conglomerate. What is that? It's just a sedimentary layer of stone. So it's just stone. Seems like not a big deal. Alright, I'm going to continue to mouse over things. Not mouse over, but I believe I could use the mouse if I wanted to because of... I actually don't have mouse control turned on. So, but can I click? I can. I can actually left click as well with the mouse if I want to. That's another option. So there's dense meadow grass. Let's click on this circle. Plum tree trunk, which we knew. We knew that was a tree. I went up one layer now. By the way, if you missed that, did shift comma, and now we'll click on this layer. This is a plum tree branch. Thick plum tree branch. I go back down a layer. Let's click on this little, a hemp plant. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm guessing that hemp can be used to make clothes. Just a guess. Red bean vines. Continue to look around. Garden cress. Hide root. Red bean vines. Okay. A chert boulder. A conglomerate boulder. Interesting. So you can look around, and again, we kind of knew that this was going to. We knew that what it was going to generally look like before, just because we spent so much time looking at the embark site. This is a downward slope, open space over the water. If I go down a layer, oops, that was up. If I go down a layer, I'm looking at a murky pool with stagnant water. Same thing here, a murky pool with stagnant water. That's actually pretty good, I think, because that means that I can drink from those pools if I need to, and they will refill when it rains. Because it says murky or stagnant water, that means that it will not refill automatically. Let's go back up to the default layer. I'm going to hold down, go down to the lake or to the river, to the brook, whatever it is, and we'll go down a layer. So this is a brook. It looks like this water is fresh, and it looks like it will refill itself automatically. Let's take a look at the ocean. So as you can see, each time I press, I'll let the bottom left, the input's clear. If I press to the right once, watch the little X on the yellow sand. If I press it once, it will move over 1. But if I want to travel great distances, I can hold Shift, and it will jump 10 spaces. Pretty sure it's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, it's 10. So I can hold Shift to jump around the map pretty quickly. I know that's harder to watch, to see, because it's moving so quickly. So I'll try to avoid doing that when I can. So we are looking at an ocean wave here, which we knew. And let's go down. We are looking at muddy, wet, yellow sand and salt water, as well as a dusting of mud at the bottom. So yes, we definitely cannot drink the salt water, which we knew, but it looks like we can safely drink the brook water. So that's good. That gives us a place to fish from, a place to drink from if we run out of alcohol, or if there's some kind of awful event where all our alcohol is destroyed. So I'm going to hold Shift, go up a few times, kind of recenter on where my dwarves are. By the way, an additional bit of text down here, whenever you're pressing K, remember K is to look around, in this look around mode, it will tell you whether you're outside or inside, whether it's light or dark, whether you're above ground or below ground. So if I go down 1, as you can see, I am inside. Technically I'm inside the ground. It's dark, so there's no light, and it's subterranean, so I'm under the earth. If I go over to the water, it's still technically outside, light and above ground, because light can pierce through. My dwarves could walk in from the outside. I mean, they would drown. It's 7 water, so they won't, but they could. Alright, so now that we kind of know what our terrain looks like here, let's mouse over, not mouse over, I'm probably going to say mouse over a lot because that's very common vernacular, right, for putting a cursor over something, but just know that if I say that, I'm talking about that little yellow X there. So here it is, and I'm going to put it down over this kind of brownish looking swirl thing, and look, this is our wagon, and underneath the wagon there are conglomerate pebbles. So here's our wagon. This is the thing that brought all of our equipment, and all of our equipment is sitting on this wagon. I'm actually going to zoom in. Now, if you want to zoom in, this is a completely different button, but it is, you just use the mouse wheel. I'm not sure what the keyboard button is, but you can zoom in, and I'm going to do that just so you can see a little bit better, because there's a lot going on in these 12 or so tiles. So here's my cursor right here. I'm going to mouse over, again mouse over. I'm going to cursor over this dwarf, and look, we have Logim Kono Stunnom, and he's the mason. Now each dwarf will have a subtitle, planter, based on the skills that you give them when you embark. So if you remember correctly, I made 2 miners, 1 carpenter, 1 mason, a farmer, and a leader. So if I continue to look around, here's our farmer, here's our expedition leader, and here's an interesting one. This is our carpenter. There's also a stray cat there, and underneath is the wet black sand, which we know they're standing on. If I move the cursor off and we take a look at this tile right here, where my X, the green X is covering right now, I'll take it away. You can see that it flips between the dwarf and the cat. Any number of characters, any number of items, any number of anything can exist in the same tile. A tile is basically infinitely wide for the purpose of your imagination. So if I put every single dwarf, every single cat, all the dogs in one tile, they would all sit there, no problem. It wouldn't feel crowded. They wouldn't be upset. So remember that. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 or 8 tiles flipping back and forth. That's because there's multiple things happening on each tile. So if we go here to this tile, you can see we have one of our miners and a stray turkey hen. If we go here, you have 2 mussels. If you go here, you have a water buffalo and 2 mussels. Right? A few other things you can do from this look view is you can select someone or select a thing, like for instance the stray cat. Upper right corner you can see a stray cat that's tame. In the bottom right corner, beneath whether you're inside or outside, if it's light above ground, below ground, you can press enter to view it. This is a small mammalian carnivore. It is usually domestic and hunts vermin. And then you have a generated description. She is gigantic. Her hair is dark brown. Her ears are gray. Her tail is light brown. Her head is black. Her front paws are black. Her rear paws are dark brown. Her skin is ecru. Her eyes are light blue. Again, this is a procedurally generated description of that cat. Same thing if I go to the mussel. If I press enter. Oh no, you actually can't look at that, which is fine. You can't look at like terrain and things like that. So look, if I go to the driftwood, can't press enter, it doesn't do anything. Let's actually look at a dwarf. Let's look at Muthcat Nomaltel, our expedition leader. Press enter. This doesn't give us that base description like the cat does, but it gives us a few different options. We can see how many objects he owns, and that's going to be things like clothes for the most part right now. We can look at his relationships. We can set a follow hotkey so that if we want to jump to him very quickly, we can. Or we can enter his thoughts and preferences. I'm going to press enter to enter his thoughts and preferences, and you're going to see about 800, 1,000 words of text. Don't be overwhelmed. Okay, maybe not 1,000, not quite. So this is basically everything about your dwarf, this specific dwarf right here, that you could ever want to know. Here's his current thought. You can see it in quotes. I've been rained on. How annoying. Sure enough, he is annoyed when caught in the rain. Within the last season, he was annoyed after being accosted by oysters, but he felt fondness talking with a friend. So all those things that happened, these things that he's talking about, being accosted by oysters, his fondness talking with a friend, being caught in the rain, all that has happened. I'm going to hit escape a few times to go back. In those few seconds where we unpause the game, hit escape again, and unpause with space, all those things happened. He was accosted by oysters somehow. The mussel, I guess. He was accosted by an oyster. He talked with a friend, and he was rained on. We knew all that happened. We saw it all happening. It just happened very quickly. Let's press K again, and we will find him. Remember, I'm zoomed in, so everything looks a little bit more blown up than it normally does. We'll press enter again, and press enter. So everything after that will tell you about the dwarf. He's a worshipper of Shedem Bronze Tower, and he also is a worshipper of Datan, the Gold of Irons. He's a citizen of the Walls of Quickness, a member of the Boots of Confederations, which, if you remember, that was the name of our 7 dwarves that we sent out. They are the Boot of Confederations. And the Walls of Quickness is our lost civilization that has no cities. Remember, we are at least in the little story that we're telling ourselves in our head, we are the last remnant of this dwarven society, the Walls of Quickness. So it tells you he's the expedition leader, when he arrived at the fort, how old he is in the yellow, 60 years old. A description physically of him: he's muscular, medium-length sideburns are neatly combed, His very long mustache is neatly combed. His long beard is arranged in double braids, but he's got a clean-shaven head. He has flattened ears, and his lobes are fused to the side of his head, nearly. His hair is chocolate, his skin is cinnamon, his eyes are aquamarine, his nose is slightly upturned. That's a physical description. In the green you have things like what he likes, what he hates, his gameplay attributes, so like he's quick to heal and he's strong. But he's flimsy and susceptible to disease. So in gameplay terms, that could mean if he gets injured, he's going to heal quickly. He's strong, so he can probably move objects very fast. He's flimsy, so he probably takes extra damage, or can perhaps roll very poorly when he's in combat. And he's susceptible to disease, so if there's some kind of disease going on, he's likely to catch it. What he likes: gabbro, iron, melanite, clear glass, there's a bunch of stuff. Great analytical abilities, very good sense of position of his own body, and a feel for music. But he has questionable spatial sense. So as you can see, I'm not going to read everything else, but every single dwarf is like this. I'm going to hit escape a few times. Let's go to a different dwarf. We'll go to our mason, press enter, and then enter again. And look, he was he's a faithful worshipper of Alice Cloud Owls. He's lanky, with ill-defined muscles. He's weak, so instead of being a strong dwarf like our expedition leader, this mason is very weak. So you wouldn't want him in the army, perhaps, in the military. Now, I'm not going to look over every single one of these. In fact, I usually tend to ignore most of these, because how could you ever, for 100 dwarves, look at these and figure them out? So I'm not going to bother. But let's look at a few other things. Let's look at our turkey hen. A small forest bird, known for the distinctive flaps of skin hanging from its face. It is prized for its meat. She is gigantic. Her feathers are brown. Her skin is dark peach. Her eyes are black. Let's go back to a dwarf. We can press enter. And we can also view his relationships. Actually, let's go back to our expedition leader. Since we know the most about him, here we go. Press enter to view him. And instead of looking at his thoughts and preferences with enter, we'll look at his relationships with R. So you can see he believes in the two deities, Shidam Kilrudderdim and Datan Limel Datan. He is friends with Ustath Nakam Simulul, the miner, and he's on friendly terms with some others and long-term acquaintances with the others. Now, as your fort goes on, your dwarves will marry, they'll have kids, they will become friends with people, and all that matters if, let's say, this guy's wife gets murdered by a goblin. Well, that's going to make him pretty sad. And when dwarves get sad, interesting things happen. And I won't go into that any further until later. Another option you can see here is customize. We need that very badly. I don't want to call this guy Muthcat Nomalteal forever. So, I can, from here, press N to customize a nickname for your dwarf. Let's call him Titus. There you go. Final Fantasy X. I guess it could be Titus, depending on who you are, what you call him. I call him Titus. Let's actually change that, because people are going to be like, excuse me, that's how you pronounce it. Let's call him Waka. We know for sure that's how you pronounce that. And it is a he, so that works out well. So now you can see, I've pressed enter. If you see my mouse, his name now is Waka Nomalteal. So when I go back, Waka Staffmost, Nomalteal is apparently his dwarven name. Staffmost is his English translated name. So he's Waka Staffmost, the expedition leader. And now when I move my cursor over him, as you can see in the upper right corner here, he is Waka. So you can do that with all your dwarves. I'll go to Shem Ala whatever, and we will customize him. Let's see, is it a him? Let's take a look. It's a she, actually. It's a she. So let's rename with Y. In. We'll name her Celeste. I'm gonna be on. This is gonna be a Final Fantasy naming session here. I'm playing Final Fantasy Record Keeper on iOS, and so Final Fantasy is kind of on my brain right now. Let's press enter on our miner. It's a he. So let's do the tried and true. We'll go Y into nickname Sid. Alright. Let's see. That was 1, that was 2. I see 1 right here. There's 2 here. Here's 1. Here's a minor. Oh, there's an oyster. Yeah, okay. Probably the one that was been accosting people. We will go thoughts and preferences to make sure it's a he. It is. We'll go Y in to customize. And this one can be named Luck. Alright. So that's, what, 3? So now we have a predicament. As you can see here, there's Celeste and Geschund on one tile, here. And down here, we have Tosted and Sackzul on another tile. So what if I wanted to look at Sackzul and not Tosted? I can't really, if I press enter, I look at the wrong person. Let's go ahead and name him. We will go to Y in to pick a nickname. And we will name him, is it Von? Or Von? Von. I think that's right. That looks right. So I've got Von, the minor. What if I want to look at Sackzul? So in order to ever navigate through a submenu, which everything on the right is usually a submenu, you use the plus and the minus keys on the numpad. And remember, if you're playing on a laptop that doesn't have a numerical pad on the right, those are not going to be your buttons. You're going to have to go and look at what the other buttons are. I actually don't remember what the other off the top of my head, but I will try to remember to look them up and add them to the to a comment in the video. But as you can see, as I press plus, the highlight moves down. So now Sackzul is highlighted. Press plus again. The wagon is highlighted. The seafoam is highlighted now. So I can go minus, minus to pick Sackzul. Press enter. And now, as you can see, I'm looking at Sackzul. Take a look. It's a she. So we will go with Y in. Let's go with lightning. So that's 2. Let's take a look at these. 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's only 1 more. We have Geschund. It's a she, so we will do Y in. Let's go with Rydia. Cool. Alright, I'm going to zoom back out. Now remember that you zoom in and out with the mouse wheel, so it's not going to show up in the bottom right corner. But I'm going to zoom out until I get what looks like a good perspective. And I will hit escape to remove the look feature. There's one other key that I want to talk about right now in this episode, and that's the tab key. Right now, all you're looking at is the entire play screen, and that's what most of the view will be as I'm playing. If I press tab, you see a section appeared on the right, and as I move around, that's actually not lining up very well, is it? That's interesting. It looks like a bug. Let me hit tab a few times. Interesting. That's actually bugged. If you look on the right, the X should be lining up with what I'm seeing. It's like an overview map, or it's like the Oh well. Ignore that then for now. I'm not sure why it's behaving that way. As you can see, it's going off the screen as I move to the right. It shouldn't be doing that. That should be showing what I'm looking at, like an overview in the main screen, but it's not behaving that way right now, so ignore it. I'll press tab again, and now as you can see, I have this menu on the right. This menu is literally everything you can do in Dwarf Fortress. I'm not going to go over what these are right now. That'll probably be in the next episode, and I won't dive deep into each one. I'll just do like a brief overview, or maybe that'll be like an extra video if you were really interested. My plan is to talk about these as they come up, one at a time, and not really as I'm playing, basically, because we're like 4 videos deep now, and I've not really gotten to gameplay much at all. But I wanted to just prepare us for this. So you can hit tab to cycle through all these different windows. That's the overview, again, which is behaving weirdly. Our kind of menu system, which we can make really small if we want to. And we can actually play like this, and I might actually do that. That way the menu is always up on the right, so you can always pause it, or I can always make callouts to specific letters, specific specific letters of the menu in case I want to dive into something. Like the announcements is A, so press A. Oh, we have no recent announcements. Escape to back up. So that's pretty much it for this episode. This is kind of, what am I looking at kind of episode. So let me think. I'm actually going to zoom way out. This is another thing you can do. I'm going to zoom out so I can see the entire map. As you can see, there's our dwarves. If you follow my mouse cursor, there's the ocean. Let me unpause it. You can see the waves pressing in. Everything's kind of moving. Everything's alive. There's a little animal moving right there. So let me now go up. You can see trees. Remember, I'm going up a layer with the, was that the less than sign? Yeah. Going up some layers. And the higher I go, the less I can see. So I'm above the trees now. Above the trees, even higher and higher and higher. And now I can't see anything. Alternately, I can go down. And there's the base. I can go down to see the water in each of the little pools, and the water in the ocean, and the water in the brook. I can go down again. You can see the brook and the pools are not very deep, but the ocean is. I can go down again. There's only a little part of ocean left, and now I'm completely underground. There's one thing I didn't talk about at the very beginning. Remember when I called your attention, if you follow my mouse here, to the very far right edge of the screen? The blue section is everything above ground. The brown section is everything below ground. And this little whitish yellow tile is where I'm currently at in the z-axis. So if I continue to go down, you can see the blue is becoming diminished and the brown is growing. You can also see at the very bottom, I'm still 69 layers from the very bottom, but I'm 130 layers from the very top. If I continue to go up, I can find the surface very easily, like that. I'll zoom back in to a good view. There we go. Alright, cool. I think that's going to do it for this episode. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been, but I think that I covered everything that I wanted to. In the next episode, we'll talk about some more menus, get our dwarves actually doing something. Talking about designations, I think, is probably our first step, because you use that quite often to cut down trees, dig holes, build ramps, things like that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. I'll see you next time.